Good morning. Welcome back to another episode of Road to Wreck. Today's episode is going to be slightly different, and we're going to start off with a reset compilation. After that, I'll cover 3 runs relatively quickly and finish off with a full run to Verzik.
Whenever you feel like you're about to sink, I don't wanna just forget you, but I wanna be fine. I'll be waiting for a sign to light up, yeah. And your heart is out of sight, I just wanna feel mine. Hey you, I could become the one for another one. Hey you, maybe then you'll know that I was never one. I'm gonna be the one for another one. Maybe then you'll know that I was never one. I'm gonna be the one for another one. I don't wanna fear you tonight. Got me. Got me.
Alright. Come on, Bloat, play nice. I guess not today, but we didn't let him stop us. What we got here is a 112 Maiden. I'm not going to cover this one, but I'll cover the one in the full run. We get great Bloat specs, and this time we take him down.
Not the fastest, but
Alright.
top.
Then at Nylo, we get great waves and actually a good boss. Turns out, when we get good bosses, we get good entries. Surprise.
Nice.
Swing!
What?
Really?
Okay! Holy!
Let's go.
Alright, that's a 525 into Sote. That's kinda crazy. Well, let's see what Sote has to say.
Miss. Going again. Miss.
Wow.
Miss.
Holy shit.
Bruh.
Miss.
Holy
Bruh.
That miss.
6 miss.
Ha.
Oh.
Sote said no. Next up, one more run to Sote with a 112 Maiden, a 48-second shitty Bloat, good waves but bad Nylo boss, and a 536 into Sote. We usually resign this Sote entry, but the mage cape swaps were resetting in like 7 minutes, so we just went to use a free cape basically. Then we did the Sote with no deaths, but we got a what I would call average Sote with this method, and with a 136 on a 536 entry, this rate was unfortunately not saved by Sote. After that run, we're already coming up to the last run of the video, and I wanted to take some time to cover each room in a bit more detail. We almost insta-zero Maiden, and because it's so close, the North Mage decides to let me finish her off while he saves close for the skip. Usually after an insta-zero, she's quite deep, but because our entry bow's noodled, we get a pretty average 18-second proc. Both mages bow massive on 74%, and we get a deep 70s proc. Our ranger notices this and decides that we need to deal less damage to Maiden to prevent a 9-second 50s proc. This kind of early 50s proc is bad because the North Mage would still be freezing 4s while the 50s spawn, meaning he couldn't freeze North 1. Our ranger is quite good at realizing this, and we almost never proc the early 50s. In the meantime, he gets an extra hit on S1, which he has to kill anyway, so he gets back on the boss quicker after the 50s, which is a win-win. Because it was already deep and the ranger got back on the boss quickly after 50s, we get a quick 30s and manage to stack them on the old 50s. This is about as perfect as it gets. The skip was pretty average because we didn't get a deep 30s, but with no leak into the skip, that's a clean 112 Maiden. Okay, next up is today's bully, and we're actually close to not getting the 1 down again. Fortunately, Alex managed to flinch and has enough health to do one more swing, while Bloat is already flying the rest of the team to death, and Alex deals a finishing blow. This Bloat is terrible, but with a 112 Maiden, almost any 1 down is runnable. Next up is Nylo, and for once I'm going to show the entire waves. This won't be the detailed waves analysis that I was talking about, but rather just an attempt at explaining the general idea and what I'm focused on. The beginning of the waves is always the same, and right here I'm just waiting for splits. The way I personally view Nylo is I have to get my pre-fires. What I've basically done is I've memorized which waves to pre-fire and how much time is between those pre-fires. Knowing how much time is between the pre-fires allows me to decide what to do before the next pre-fire. And that's kind of it actually. But let's see if I have anything interesting to say while we're going through this clip. Okay, so the important wave that I'm thinking about right now is the double mage wave. I want to pre-fire the big mage first, and I want to be on tick for that. In order to be on tick, I like blowpiping the double range wave before the double mage phase if there's no mages in the room. Then, I'm filling up the gap until the next mage pre-fires. I know the other mage goes for the south lane pre-fire, so I decide to click a mage in the room to not double up on smalls. Then we both pre-fire the big mage south, which is important to kill and worth doubling up on. The next wave I'm thinking about is the first triple big mage wave. I want to pre-fire south, do one sang to fill the time, finish off south or back up the west big, and ideally if all mages are dead, I pre-fire the south ranger. Then I kill smalls because I actually don't want to be on tick 1 for the next south big mage. If you kill that on tick 1, the splits spawn 1 tick before wave 20, which is the cap increase, and I don't want to accidentally cause stalls by having those splits spawn before the actual cap increase. After cap increase, we just get rid of all of the remaining bigs, and then I get ready for my next pre-fire cycle. At this point, the room is meant to be really clean, and therefore, as a mage, I only have bigs on my mind. The reason we want to pop the bigs ASAP is because the sooner they die, the faster their splits spawn. In turn, having their splits come earlier means we can get better barrage or chin value, as well as simply have more stuff to hit. Someone will always have a little gap in their rotation, and if there happens to be a crap around that they can hit, that's good. If there's multiple bigs alive and we kill them late, we might come to a point where the room is clean, we have nothing to hit, but the splits are still waiting to spawn. This is what we need to avoid, and due to the way these late waves bigs spawn, the mages can pre-fire them, which cleans most of them up before they even enter the room. During the last few waves and the cleanup, both mages cover one side, west and east. However, because I know the second to last wave is a big east mage, I barrage the east mage's pillar because I know he's busy killing the big. Then I clean up the west mages first, and then I prioritize northwest rangers, northwest melees, southwest melees, and then anything east in that order. That's it for today's wave breakdown though. Let's see the Nylo boss. Okay, we get him to 0. Range. Mage. Melee. Mage again. Range. And it actually dies on this phase. That's pretty good for a double mage boss. We're at 535 into Sote, which is just about our threshold, so we decide to run it, as it's still early into our sesh and we have 5 cape swaps. The Sote starts off good and we get 2 hammers on P1. We run the maze and Alex is actually still very high HP, because he didn't get any orbs, so he gets chanced, but he lives. We get 3 hammers on P2 because neither melee can back themselves up yet, so we have the ranger insta-back up regardless of what they hit, because if they miss, it would take too much time to double spec after he does a scythe hit. Then we DD for the death ball, I spec transfer the meleeer, and I almost get juked by those Sote orbs before we proc the second maze. Fortunately, I'm paying attention and I survive until the maze proc. Then we start the second maze, and this one felt really weird, because a large part of the maze actually was on our path straight north. I base my timing on the sound cue of the PNEG jingle plugin, but I'm also expecting maze damage sounds every take. This almost threw me off, to be honest. Ultimately, we all survived and get a decent 134 Sote. Well, Alex didn't quite make it to the end, but Sote was already dead, so it didn't affect the time at all. It's been a while since I've shown a full Xarpus, and I feel like it's time for one. Basically, during P1, every corner is assigned to a player, which leaves one player without a designated corner. They're the so-called float, which means they cover the corners of the players who are currently busy holding down an exhumed. Once the player from their designated corner is free again, they take the exhumed held by the float so that the float can continue floating. In the meantime, we all have our specific roles for specking. 3 players got booked in order to regen just enough spec for a ZCB at the end of Xarpus. This means they can only use 50% spec at the start, which means they should be the ones to hammer. the BGSers have to keep BGSing until he's 0 defense, so they need to have 2 specs available and ready to go. The BGSers also delay their thrall until after their specs because thralls mess up the spec share plugin, which makes it really hard to tell if the boss is 0 defense or not. We get him to 0 right away, and both BGSers can save claws. We don't insta-claw because on some P3 procs, the only way to be tick perfect without playing Xarpus roulette is by claw scratching to win a tick. Obviously, claw specking is better than claw scratching, so we keep the spec up our sleeve in case it happens to be that specific screech proc. In the meantime, I'm just 5-ticking, and I like to be a bit extra during Xarpus because otherwise it's such a boring room. If you want to know more about Xarpus 5-ticking, I do have a guide which goes into maybe a bit too much detail, but it can help almost anyone learn how to properly 5-tick. Towards the end I spellbook swap to spawn a new thrall, as my original one will probably expire just before the end, and we don't want that. Because of this, I lose track of the cycle for a short moment and I'm late to realize it's actually the claw fix proc. I do manage to get my claws on, but I don't manage to click the spec bar in time, which is some lost value. I end up claw specking later, but we'll never gain that claw scratch damage back. It's fine though, and as the ZCBs go off, we basically one-shot him into a 209. Not great. This raid is pretty much lost as we've already pushed the threshold after Sote, and now get a below average Xarpus. You know how he reset though, pretty much never after Xarpus. For Verzik, I don't have a lot to say because crabs go boom, and there wasn't a lot of motivation to stay alive after a bad P1. Unlucky, go next. Alright guys, that's it for today's video. Surprise Nylo boss.
Yeah.
It's actually pretty neat.
Yeah. Oh my god, get out of my face.
I'm gonna say. Okay, that's actually it though. So I hope you enjoyed the video. Check out my Twitch as I'm streaming most of the sessions, and as always, thanks for watching.